Are you having trouble finding a reputable technician to service your prized vintage audio gear? Well, you're not alone. There's a huge shortage of qualified technicians in this space, and as a full-time audio tech myself, I see this firsthand. But the good news is there's hope. So in this video, I'm going to give you 5 strategies to help you find a trustworthy tech. And if all else fails, I'll lay out a roadmap of how you can start learning how to service audio electronics yourself. This first strategy is going to seem extremely obvious, but it's still worth going over. Ask a friend. If you have a friend, a work colleague, a family member that's also into vintage audio in your area, ask them who they've used in the past. If you get really lucky, the guy that they used last is still in business and taking work, and if they like them, you can get a referral and you're off to the races. There's another important piece of information that you can get as well, which is who have they used in the past that they didn't like. Maybe they took a prized piece of electronics to a local repair shop and they overcharged them, did shoddy work, the unit was in and out of the shop and they could never figure it out. Those are important pieces of information for you to consider so that you don't end up wasting your own time going with a tech that's not up to the task. As a technician, what I can tell you is that if I have a good repeat local customer that refers a family member or a friend, I'm much more likely to take on that project than if I have a random person sending me an email or a DM out of the blue. And here's why. Just like you're searching for a qualified technician, me as a tech, I'm qualifying customers. Not every tech-customer relationship is ideal. And the most common issue that I end up with is somebody that is messaging me for audio repair that doesn't understand what's involved in repair itself, the costs of labor and parts, and how quickly things can add up. So I end up putting together a quote, spending my time doing that, and they just say, oh no, that's too expensive. But if I've got a referral, there's a pretty good chance that that potential customer has talked to their friend, and their friend has said, listen, Ben takes a while, he's got a long backlog, you need to wait in line and it's going to be expensive. And they're already going to know that going in, so it's worth my time to start that conversation with the potential customer. So what I'm trying to say here is having a referral is powerful. So even though strategy 1, asking a friend, seems simple, if you can find the tech that they use and get a referral, that's going to give you a foot in the door. Before we move on to this second strategy, let's talk a little bit about why it's so hard to find an audio technician nowadays in the first place. If we look back to the glory days of hi-fi, mid-1960s to late 1970s, electronics repair shops were all over the place, and that's for a few different reasons. First of all, there was just more to service. You had radios from the 1940s and 1950s that still needed to be worked on, black and white and color televisions, and a lot of this equipment was designed to be serviced almost indefinitely. The manufacturers supplied good service literature and good access to parts, so it was a viable business model for a lot of people. Now, when we got into the 1980s, the economy wasn't that great. We saw the disappearance of the anodized silver faceplates and everything kind of turned into black plastic junk. I call it the dark ages of hi-fi. And then after that, it went into kind of the throwaway era, where I remember when I was in high school, a stereo was either a boombox with a CD player built into it, or one of those all-in-one stacks where you had the CD player, tape deck, radio, and then a couple speakers that just jammed up next to it. And when it broke, you threw it in the garbage and went to Target and bought a new one. So that's kind of the state of things. So in a few niche markets, some of the old timers survived and just continued to do the work. But in a lot of areas, it's just completely not a viable business anymore. So you get kind of the boutique techs like myself that specialize in this one thing. So that's why the supply of techs is so low. The old timers finished and retired, and there's not a lot of new people coming in. The second strategy is Facebook groups. Facebook groups lately are just exploding in the vintage audio space. Some of them have over 250,000 followers in them, and that's a huge pool that you can draw knowledge from. In order to be successful with this strategy, you need to be specific about your location. So an example post might go something like this. Hey guys, I have a Marantz 2270. It just started acting up. It was my dad's. I really like this piece. I think I'd like to have it fully restored. I'm located in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm willing to drive up to 200 miles. Is there anyone in my area that you can recommend? And hopefully what that will do is draw people from that state that have had experience with technicians in cities that are close by. Maybe they can recommend a repair shop or a friend. You might get somebody that says, hey, send me a DM, I've got a guy. And hopefully you'd be able to find somebody. So that's taking advantage of these big user bases in these groups and being specific so that you can get people that are within your immediate area to answer and hopefully give you a quality referral. Now, another strategy you can use with Facebook groups is going ultra specific. So instead of drawing from that big pool of users, you're looking for a very small pool of users that have very specific knowledge about one make or model. So a good example is the Pioneer SX1250 Owners Club. This is a group that's dedicated to one single receiver model, and that's really all that's discussed. So if you have a Pioneer SX1250 and you go in that group, you can ask technical questions and get service recommendations. You have people that have had experience getting that exact model serviced by a technician. And what you'll get in this case is sometimes that'll steer you towards specialists, which by default means kind of ship and work, which I'm not necessarily an advocate for. But if somebody specializes in that specific model that you have, that's a good way to find somebody that's worth shipping it to. The third strategy is posting in an audio forum. The most popular vintage audio forum is audiokarma.org. It's a great website. You can create a free account, read through the rules, go into the proper category, and create a post similar to what we did in the second strategy. Make, model, what you want done, where you're located, and what your distance is. And that hopefully will yield a crowdsourced response to get you a tech referral. Now, another thing you can do on Audio Karma is use the search box, and you don't even need an account for that. So you can just go up into the search box and type in something like tech in Wisconsin, enter your state. And it'll bring up a list of all the other forum posts that had a similar question. And you can go through those posts and hopefully find a tech that's in your general area. Now, be aware that some of these technicians may no longer be in business. So take a look at the post date. If it's from 2014, maybe they don't do work anymore. If it's 2024, there's a good chance you can get in contact with that individual. So that's another strategy for you to try. If you're finding value in this content so far, I'd invite you to like and subscribe. Let's move on to strategy number 4. The fourth strategy is classified ads, Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist. But I'm not necessarily talking about somebody advertising that they do audio repair work, because that's almost a red flag. The more experienced technicians usually will have a pretty long backlog. And if they're anything like me, they're not going to post a public classified ad looking for new work, because it's just going to inundate them with more repair requests when they're already backlogged out months in advance. So usually what it means if somebody is posting an advertisement like that is it might be a hobbyist that's thinking about getting more serious with audio repair as a business, and they're kind of getting their business off the ground. So they might be a great tech, just know that their experience level might be a little bit lower than somebody that's working primarily off of referral work. Now, the strategy that I'm actually talking about is pattern recognition. So what I do is once or twice a day, I hop on Facebook Marketplace and I'm just scrolling through, looking at listings that I like and clicking on them. And eventually, I recognize who the main players are in the area. It's interesting, I just had to go through this whole process again because I moved from Manhattan to upstate New York. And being in a whole new region, I didn't know any of the players in the area. So I start looking at Facebook Marketplace and I'm seeing listings that say serviced, restored, just back from the tech. And keywords like that can help you find somebody that has obviously just had something serviced. And you might recognize over time, this same guy keeps posting serviced electronics. What's this about? So at that point, you could reach out and send them a DM, just have proper expectations going in. You might get shut down pretty quick, but you could say something like, hey, I saw your listing for the Macintosh MC225. It says that it was fully restored. I'm not interested in your unit, but I do have a tube amp that I'd like to have serviced. Do you think you could tell me who your technician is? And they may be reluctant to give out that information. Some people are pretty protective about their tech, but if they are able to share that, now you've got a referral and you're off to the races. The other thing that you might find out is that they serviced it or restored it themselves, and then it's another foot in the door. Now, some people that are buying and selling on classifieds like that don't do or are not interested at all in doing work for the public. But one thing that you can try instead is proposing a trade. So if you have maybe 2-3 pieces that you don't care about that are broken, maybe you can work out a trade that goes something like this. I've got a Marantz 2270 that I really like. I'd like to have it repaired. How about I give you these 3 broken pieces and all I want in return is my 2270 for the lamps to work again and for all the controls to be clean. Do you think you could do that for me? And you might be able to start building a relationship with that technician. Just make sure you vet them first. The fifth and final strategy that I'm going to share is manufacturer websites. I'm just going to give one example. This is Macintosh Laboratories, and it's because they've done such a good job with it. Macintosh is an iconic American brand. They've been in business for over 75 years, and they have a great database of authorized Macintosh service centers. So if you have a piece of Mac gear that you'd like to have serviced, this is a great resource. You can hop on their website, go to the support section. It says Find Service Agency, and you can type in your location and your radius, and it will pop up all of the authorized service centers for Macintosh gear. So that's a great way that you can leverage a manufacturer website to find a tech that's qualified for that specific brand. Now, these 5 strategies I just pulled off the top of my head. I'm sure there's many other good strategies for finding a qualified local tech. So if you have one that you'd like to share with the community, head down to the comments and leave it below. In addition to those 5 strategies, I'm going to give 2 recommendations on things not to do. The number one thing that I recommend not doing is purchasing a flat rate restoration listing on eBay. Now, I'm sure there are plenty of legitimate technicians that do it that way. Maybe they're in a remote location and have no local customer base, and the only way that they can get consistent work to support themselves is by putting up a public listing like that. Could be completely legit, but I warn against it because it's so easy to get scammed. Let me break down how it works. Let's use a Pioneer receiver as a hypothetical example. So in the search bar, SX1250 restoration. Listing comes up, Pioneer SX1250, full restoration, $1,200 flat rate, all boards done. You scroll down, see really beautiful pictures of previous work, a description of all the high quality parts that they use. Everything looks above board. Click buy it now, send them the $1,200, communicate with them through the messaging system. Maybe they snake us off into email where it's less able to be tracked by eBay. You negotiate to send them the unit, but they come back referencing the policy in their listing. We will return this within 60 to 90 days, fully restored. You send it out, 2 months go by, you message, hey, just wondering what the status is. How's my unit doing? Oh, we're so swamped, we really can't get to it. Yours is next in line, it's coming up, we promise. Just give us another 2 weeks. Message a couple weeks later, same story, they push you back again, and before you know it, they've nudged you outside of the eBay protection window. And there's a point in time where eBay just washes their hands of the transaction and you have no recourse. So at this point, you're out the money and you're out the unit. So be very, very careful buying any sort of restoration or service work through the eBay system. The second strategy that I'm going to advise against is reaching out to somebody that posts audio repair videos on YouTube, such as myself. And here's the reason why. The success rate of getting a YouTube personality to service your electronics is extremely low compared to any of the other strategies that I suggested. So that's why I ask that you avoid that. If you look at the big audio repair channels, a lot of them will have disclaimers at the front of the video that say, I only have time to service what you see in the videos, or I don't do service for the general public. And the reason that those disclaimers are there is once a channel gets to a certain level, the creators are going to be inundated with repair requests and it's just overwhelming. So they put in those disclaimers so that they stop getting the questions. And I've had to deal with that myself on my channel. And don't get me wrong, when I started on YouTube, YouTube was my credential and it really kickstarted my business. And I'm really, really grateful for that. But I just can't answer all of these requests. So one of the main reasons that I'm creating this video is that so that I have a resource that I can send to people when they reach out and say, hey Ben, I see that you work on a lot of 1250s. I'm located in California. When can I ship you mine? And the answer, unfortunately, is going to be, sorry, I don't take ship-in work. I have a very long backlog of local customers. I'm going to send you this video link, and hopefully this will help you find a tech in your area. So that's my main reason for recommending not reaching out to YouTube techs as they grow in size. There's just not enough time to answer these requests, and definitely not enough time in the calendar to do all the restoration and service work. So because the success rate is going to be so much lower compared to those other methods, that's why I recommend against it. Let's assume for a second that you've used one of these strategies and you've found a technician that's willing to take on your project, but you'd like to know a little bit more about their skill level. So here's some questions that you can ask to kind of gauge the level of expertise of the technician that you're considering handing off your prized piece of electronics to. The first and most important question is, how long have you been doing this? The longer a technician has been in business, the more pieces of electronics they've seen, the more issues they've had to solve and work through. And speaking from experience, Every single piece that I work on, I learn something on, and it just builds and builds and builds. And then when I get a new piece that used to be challenging 3 or 4 years ago, it's like a cakewalk to fix it. So if a technician has more years under their belt, they're going to be able to fix things faster, and the quality of the work is going to be better. The second thing to ask for is a portfolio of previous work, and this is often on a technician's website or a Facebook page for the business. And a lot of the good techs will take a lot of pride in their work and be happy to post before and after pictures of what they've done. As I mentioned earlier, the more experienced technicians tend to have a longer backlog. And the reason is the word is out that they do good work and they get booked up. So if you are looking at a potential mystery technician and their rates are kind of low and they have no portfolio and they can get you in right away, those are some red flags. So in my experience, techs go through different stages of equipment as they level up their competence. And the reason I know this is because I've been through this myself, and I've seen many of my tech friends go through the same linear progression. So when I first started out, my bench was just a Fluke 87.5, some soldering and desoldering equipment, and a bunch of hand tools. And that was okay to start out. I was able to do a lot of good work, but I didn't charge people for it. I didn't start charging people for work until I was really confident in my skills. And that next level involved signal analysis. So that was signal generators, oscilloscopes that allow me to do signal tracing and actually verify and prove that the work that I was doing was quality work. The next level after that is the more advanced test equipment like distortion analysis and RF alignment. So that's usually the progression that technicians go through. Basics, signal analysis, and then advanced analysis and RF alignment. So that's kind of how you can judge where they are in their evolution as a technician. Now, you can get two things that happen that I want to make you aware of. A bench that looks like this full of test equipment does not guarantee competence. You have to know how to use it. So an impressive bench full of a bunch of test equipment doesn't necessarily mean that you're dealing with a good tech. The other side of it is you could have a technician that just has the basics set up. DMM, soldering and desoldering tools, and they're an amazing tech that does really quality work. I have a lot of friends that are at this level and do work that's just astonishing. So don't make the mistake that either a lot of test equipment equals good tech and not a lot equals bad tech. It's just a way that you can kind of generally gauge competence through the stages as a technician develops. Now let's say you've gone through all of these strategies and you still can't find a local tech. You do have the option to find somebody that you can ship your electronics to, but there's a little bit of added risk and complexity. I don't generally recommend it, but at the end of the day, if you can't find anyone, you got to do what you got to do. But I do want to offer this final out. Learn how to repair audio electronics yourself. I didn't just magically get to this point. This was years and years and years of grinding. And it's easier nowadays than it was when I started. All I had was Hi-Fi Engine and Audio Karma, and I would just sit there and read posts and scratch my head for hours. I would have to wait days for responses. Nowadays, you have so many resources. There's so much knowledge that's captured and documented on YouTube. The Facebook groups, you can get a response from somebody that's worked on a similar unit in like minutes. It's a completely different ballgame. So, I mean, I've done it. I'm not an electrical engineer. I'm self-taught, student of YouTube University and Audio Karma. So if this is something that you're interested in doing, maybe you've already started a little bit, it's completely possible. You just have to have the right mindset, be willing to learn and willing to blow stuff up. So you can start on pieces of equipment that aren't very valuable. And once you've honed your skills, then move up to something that you really care about. So I really encourage you, if you're interested in this hobby and you have any inclination to start doing repairs yourself, it's super, super rewarding. So if you'd like to, give it a shot. Now, if you've already started down this path and are looking for a little bit of guidance, you might like my Patreon page. I have a growing library there of exclusive content that focuses on my day-to-day activity at the bench. So what you get to see there is fresh projects come up onto the bench, do a baseline test, figure out what's broken. I diagnose them, repair them, and you just see that process again and again. So if that sounds like a helpful way to learn, might be a good resource for you. Check out Novalux Stereophonic on Patreon. Thank you so much for stopping by the channel. I really appreciate it. I hope you gained some useful knowledge from this video. Again, I invite you to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one.